Hello and welcome to another episode of the Socially Numb Podcast. I'm your host, Richie Leahey. Today, I'm out and about traveling to an event, so hopefully this is able to post on time. If not, it'll still be scheduled and posted on whatever date. This is the Monday of, is it the last Monday of March or May? I think it's the last Monday of May. I'm going to do something a little bit different this week and probably next week. I know I normally said I was going to mix in some type of tech topic and then some type of video game topic. Well, the past few weeks I have been ignoring the video game stuff, I believe. Maybe throwing it on at the end. I'm not 100% sure how much I go into it. But the last real video game I talked about was on the PSP, because we had the live concert, and then before that I talked about Assassin's Creed, which was tied into the first game and the movie. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about, I've been beating some more Assassin's Creeds. I beat Assassin's Creed 2, I think I mentioned it before, and I beat Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. That's what I'm going to focus on today. I might have mentioned it before a little bit, threw it on at the end, but I'm kind of going to get into it. Might end up being a shorter podcast. I'm very close to beating Assassin's Creed Revelation, which would finish the Ezio trilogy. And I mentioned it before how I played Resident Evil 5. I'm really close to beating that. So when I get back from the event, what I'm hoping to do is finish those two games, and I'm going to talk about them on next week's podcast. But beforehand, I wanted to make sure that I covered the first two games of the trilogy. And so, up to this point, for Assassin's Creed 2, I have been heavily invested in the story. At first, in the first game, the pre-story part what's the guy, Desmond Miles? I think you were him in the first game. I actually should have looked that up before I podcast, but I'm not 100% sure. I think you were him. And that part of the game was weird to me. And I played through the game. And there's no trophies or anything with that game. And it was a lot of grinding. I mentioned it before whenever I talked about it and tying into the movies. Well, you're played as Alatar, I think that's how you say his name, in the first game. And now, when I started to play through the second game and then Brotherhood, those stories of Alatar's end have been mixed in. At least I think it's the end. It's kind of what ties it into the movies when he's looking for the Apple of Eden. So the movie was kind of just a retelling from a different perspective, from a different subject, is what they call the guys. So you play as a subject and you go back in time. The subject lives in modern times. So he goes back to the Holy War and he's fighting for the assassin side against the Templars, which I think are a real sect, kind of like a religious sect. And I think I've mentioned that before. They're basically what the Christians versus the whoever's in the Middle East that they were trying to get in the Crusades. You can look it up if you want to read into it. But that's kind of what the historical story is based on. So you're an assassin, and you're trying to stop the Christians from getting one of the Holy Grail facts. Not the Holy Grail, but something similar that gives you unknown power. It's the apple from Adam and Eve story in the Bible. So you go back through, he's playing it. He actually gets it, at least to the point I'm at. He has the apple, Alatar, and some of this might be from the beginning of Revelations because, like I said, I'm almost done with it. I think I'm on the last chapter. And usually the last chapter is kind of just like the modern day story of the subject. But I'll dive into it hopefully next week. I can have time to beat it. But I have Assassin's Creed 2. I fired up. You're the subject. I think you're running away from the facility that sends you back in time using your ancestors' memories through your blood, your DNA. Kind of like, it's built off what I assume people have like deja vu, where that's kind of like, or a hidden memory where you think in a past life you were this person and you act like them. It's kind of what the story's built up on. And it's a pretty cool premise, I think. Enough that they made a movie out of it and then made a handful of games, which I've been playing. So that's what we have up to this point. So there. We are now playing as a new historical figure called Ezio in the start of Assassin's Creed 2. Now, Ezio is in Italy, so you're going to be fighting all over Italy, which is basically the heart of the Catholic Church, which is whom I assume the Templars become or a part of. If it's based in history, I'm not 100% sure. But he goes back in time. He's fighting in Italy and Rome. You have to battle some of the stuff for the Pope, which again is by design, I believe, to tie it into, I guess, the Catholic religion. So he's there, and they have hidden the apple. And there might be some spoilers in here, so if you haven't played the games, go ahead and get them. They're relatively cheap. I'm playing through the actual collection. And with that, what the collection is, it's all 3 games. The trilogy, Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, and Revelations. The very first game, where you're back in Jerusalem, and you're playing as Alatar, the originator of finding the apple, the first assassin to do it. That game is a little bit harder to find, and I think that's because it's a pretty frustrating game. Once the guys get a hold of you, they just attack you mercilessly at the end of the game. So it's kind of like you're running through the whole game trying to get away from guys and trying to hide to complete your next task just to beat the game. That's all fault for me anyway. So for Assassin's Creed 2, you had some improvements. You're able to tear down wanted posters of yourself to kind of get some anonymity, which makes the game a lot easier and a lot more fun. You're not constantly running and then just waiting for you to be able to attack someone. And so that's what I liked about the second one. Now the story is Alatar hid the apple, and you're trying to recover it again. Like, you're trying to get it. Actually, he gave it to his leader. It corrupted his leader in the first game. This is where the spoilers are, but that's the hardest game to find, so I'll just kind of dive into it. So they find the apple in the first game. They give it to the leader of the assassins. It corrupts him. He attacks Alatar at the end of the game, and you kind of have to fight him off. You get power of the apple, and then now in the second game and in Brotherhood, and maybe a little bit of Revelations. I'm not sure how much I'm drawing from here because I just played them back to back to back. So the stories are all kind of tied together. And you can go on YouTube and look. People have cut out the cutscenes or added the cutscenes from their streaming device or whatever so that you can play right through or watch the movies to kind of go through the games if you just want to rip through and do a speed run. And so you can kind of clear up. There are some parts of the story, and there are some extra bonus content pieces that are like memories. That's my biggest beef in Revelations that you'll hear, but that's again next week. Sorry if I keep bringing it up. But the Brotherhood one, you have an added element where you recruit assassins, which I think is a cool little add-on, because what was redundant in the first 2 games, fighting, killing a bunch of guys, sneaking up, murdering them without taking hits. Now, as you get more powerful in the game, you don't have that redundancy, because you can go ahead, highlight a target, press, I think it's L2, and bring assassins out of the fold. They're hidden, they're like hiding, and they're kind of like your henchmen. So they'll assassin guys for you. And once you get a big enough one, you can bow and arrow and shoot them, and that does carry itself into Revelations, which I think is a great carryover. And I have played a little bit of Unity for the PS4, and I don't think that these elements are in that game. And who knows, I might actually, once I'm playing through these, I might restart that one. I know it wasn't in, I did play, the other one I played beforehand was, I think it's called Far Cry maybe, or something like that. I know Far Cry is a different game, but it's whatever the one is where you're the slave. Freedom's Cry maybe, Freedom Cry, and I talked about that on a podcast episode before. I know I did. So that's the previous ones that I've played through and I liked. So here we go. For these ones, they're a little bit different, because when I played Freedom Cry, I didn't know that there was a whole backstory in like modern day. I just assumed you were playing back in time. And it doesn't really make it clear in that game from the best of my knowledge. And I played through the Chronicles. I actually streamed those on Twitch, which I think I might have mentioned before, which I'm still getting mine set up. and I'm starting to get used to using the export function to YouTube, trying to build up my channel a little bit. And you can follow me and subscribe to me on there, which I've gotten some people who listen to the podcast subscribing, so I appreciate it. Tell your friends, because that's where I'm going to be putting a lot of other content. Hopefully this summer I can get some things up and running and expand a little bit. So instead of making the podcast longer, I think I'm going to go ahead and stream like I talked about. I know I kind of went away and said I wasn't going to do it, but now, after I've done some research and I've done a test on a very old Zelda game, that's the direction I'm going to go. So the PS3 doesn't have that capability. I'm in a talk with a couple of companies that make the broadcast capture devices to kind of see if we can work out a deal. And with that, I would be able to stream some Nintendo games for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 3. But for this point, I don't have plans right now to do it. So I'm trying to beat my PS3 games. I think I'm under 20 now. And I keep getting, every time there's like a free game that they put out there that I know, I'd rather just play the PS4 at this point, because the PS3, it's limited. And again, the PS4 games I redeem from PlayStation Plus, which I haven't been playing for a reason. I've been building up. I think I'm up over 20 games I have for the PS4 now that I can stream and use as extra content on Twitch, on YouTube, possibly, as long as there's no copyright. So if they claim copyright, what I'll do is I'll just stream the game. If there's no copyright, I'll export them to my YouTube so that you can catch old episodes there. But again, that depends on the developer of the game. Some let you do it, some don't. I don't know if Assassin's Creed lets you do it. I haven't tried, but I did stream when I played through Chronicles. And now I'm trying to get through. So my idea is that I'll stream the PlayStation 4 Plus games, the free ones that we get, and some other ones I have that I haven't beaten yet, along with some old PC games. That's the idea. I have them on Steam. So as I play through those, I'll stream them on Twitch, kind of get it out there, just some extra content. Again, if you're looking for it, I'm not sure about an extra podcast in just a general sense where I talk about tech and video games. But I am looking at keeping this going and trying to get more into a show format where I actually have a format of the show where, like I said, it's tech and then video games. But with me still cleaning up my computer and trying to get content moved over to the Leahey report, it's not 100% happened yet. So that's why you'll have this week and next week's episodes where I just talk about video games. But stay with me. If you have any feedback, let me know, because I know people like to talk about the video games. They do a lot better download-wise and listen-to-wise than the tech ones. So I'm trying to merge the two topics, because I am more knowledgeable in tech than I am in video games. But I'm just a fan of video games. I am looking into making some, like I said before, so maybe those will get added to the site. Just some generic ideas I had before, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to get one of those published on a phone, or even my holy grail would be to get a game up on the Nintendo Switch. But I'm still looking into the logistics of that, and when I do that, what I would like to do is make extra YouTube videos where I'm not only streaming video games, but just some videos on my YouTube channel where I do general tech things. That's what got my best views so far. Some Raspberry Pi videos, me putting it together. So I'm going to be throwing up some of those. I just don't know if I can get on a schedule with it, or if it's going to be like a monthly dump where I record 5 videos every month. In the first week of the month, I throw them up, which is more than likely if I'm going to be streaming video games. That seems to be the schedule that might work. But we'll be seeing, because I'm messing around with a couple cameras. And back to Assassin's Creed. So, Assassin's Creed 2, you're in Italy, you're taking over, you have some maps. It improved on Assassin's Creed 1 to the point where it's one of the better games in the series. Some people say that it's the best. They don't like the extra assassin part in Brotherhood, but I did like that. I like the fact that it broke the redundancy, and my guy could go ahead and shoot arrows. I think that's what they did. They shoot arrows, or they even just come and assassinate the guy for you, so that you can go ahead and keep planning. Because there are some levels where it's like, don't be detected, and the only way to do that is by sending in assassins, and it's a lot easier. They also, in one of the games, introduced a crossbow, which is a pretty sweet weapon and makes a lot of the game a lot easier. So like what I recommend doing is you can build up parts of the city. So as you clean different parts of the city up, so go ahead, stock up on cash by restoring some of the stores. If you restore the stores, then they'll start to earn you income in your house. Now, there were some like hidden secret passages and stuff to let you cut across parts of Italy, kind of jump back to your home base and stock up money. I beat the game in 2 without really doing any of that stuff. Did it make the game longer? Yeah. Did it make it harder? No, not really. I mean, it made it challenging, but it wasn't to the point where it was frustrating. So I do recommend doing that too. You can just play through without that, and then if you want to go do the collectibles, you can do that after. I know one of them, if you're trying to go for a platinum, was like collect feathers. I think I was close. I think I was like 3 or 4 trophies away. But again, I'm not a platinum hunter. And if I was streaming it on Twitch, maybe I would do that because that would give me something to do. But without that on my PS3, I don't plan on going back and trying to get the platinum. I know I'm missing the one. I think it is the feathers. And maybe Subject 17 or 16. I think Desmond's Subject 17, which is the modern day guy going back in time. Well, the guy before him had left some clues before he died. At least I think he died. I hope that's not a spoiler. That he goes back in time and he's been leaving Desmond some clues on how to successfully prevent the Templars, who are the ones sending you back in time because they want this information, to kind of change history. Because I think they lost the Crusades, right? In the history grand scheme of things, they didn't take over the Middle East. So they're trying to get these pieces back in time to find out where they are to kind of rewrite history. Well, then you go ahead and you fight with Ezio. And his family's murdered at the beginning of the game, which cutscenes and stuff kind of show. He meets up with his uncle. And if you're playing the game, you can kind of see. So that, like I said, there might be some spoilers. I did warn earlier. But you go ahead, he meets up with his uncle. And then they're the ones who are trying to restore the assassins. So as the story tells, he's going through trying to get parts of Italy and drive out this other force against the Pope. So in parts of these games, you're flying into the Vatican. They're putting fake bishops in charge to go ahead and help take over the whole country. Well, near the end, he gets in and you're fighting in the Vatican and you go down in the walls. And this might be the end of Brotherhood, or the first one. So you fight the bishop guy, or you fight the Pope, whoever it is. I can't remember. You fight him. He gives you the apple. He has it like on a staff, I think. Which makes me think that they really didn't know where they were going to go with the story. Because I think that they said that there might be like different artifacts. But every artifact you're looking for turns out to be the apple. So like, at least in these games so far, that's all we've been looking for is the apple and trying to find it, which he kind of should already find it because he found it with Alatar. I don't know why he has to come back and be Ezio. But anyway, he goes in and it's in the Vatican. He finds like this secret back passageway. So for the whole first story, you're traveling with, in modern day, you have like 3 or 4 people with you. One of them is like a computer guy. There's a girl that monitors your vitals, and then, who I don't know their names, but there is one other girl named Lucy who was with you in the first game. She runs the machine. So she runs the machine, helps send you back in time. Well, when you're back in time, you're going by her, and she's like communicating with you. And so same with these other 2 people. But when you're back in time, real things could happen. So like at the end of the first game, you go back with her and you break out of Abstergo, which is the name of the company that's run by the Templars that's sending you back in time. So you break out with her, and then she gets you to a secluded area and has her own team. So then they have a warehouse. So at the end of, I think, Assassin's Creed 2, you're in this warehouse. Well, at the end of the game, she sets up all the other two people. Again, I don't know their names. So you're set up in this warehouse. Well, at the end of the game, when you find the apple, it shoots you back to modern day times, and your safe house is under attack. So an armored truck comes in. You have to run down the stairs, and you're fighting them out. And you're able to escape with your team, which is basically Lucy and those other two people. Then I think Brotherhood starts out with you're running and you're trying to find. Basically, it shows that you're in modern day Italy, back where you were in number 2, I think. And again, I might be mixing up what games these go to. This might be the beginning of Revelations, but I'm not 100% sure. So basically, you're going in modern day at the start of one of the games. I think it's Brotherhood. And you go back to where you were fighting in the second game. Find their house, and you restore power, and it's hidden. It's supposed to be blocked off. There's no cell phone towers there yet because it's like an abandoned part of Italy. And so you sit back up, and you go back in time to try to finish where you left off in number 2. And that's where now you have Brotherhoods. You're building back up the assassins after their headquarters got destroyed by the evil guy that Althar had to fight. Basically, you're in ruins, so they're kind of like a militia now. They're spread out, and they have different areas that they kind of go through. And that's basically what the game's about. So now you're going back in time. You restore power, you still have your small team, and you go through, and you fight in the Vatican, I think. Fight that bishop guy or the pope, whoever has the apple. You take him down, and you go into this vault. Now, in the vault, it's revealed to you that a past civilization, who people think or know as gods, so different civilizations know that there were more of them, kind of like the Atlantis. It was a civilization that was modern and techy, and something led to their downfall. And they were the creators of these stories, basically from the Bible or whatever, and the artifacts, like the Apple of Eden was one of their pieces of technology. And they're warning Ezio. Well, actually, they're calling Ezio Desmond, because they foresaw in the future that Desmond would be the one. He's the chosen one that can actually find these pieces. So you're going through, and it has something to do with Christopher Columbus and Marco Polo. They're both in the game. Like Marco Polo, since he traveled back and forth, he had spread out pieces of the artifacts. And Christopher Columbus, he helped do stuff. So it ended up being in his tomb, the actual apple, I believe. Maybe that has something to do with the movie. Not 100% sure. But it's kind of like the same thing. Either way, they're kind of finding out where this apple is. Well, this lady tells Desmond that there's a traitor with him, which ends up being Lucy. So at the end of this game, he goes over and he stabs her. Now, some people think that that was just a fake, that he didn't really kill her, that it was kind of like a dream that he would have to do it in person. And that game left a lot of questions for me. So that was the end of Brotherhood. So he goes through, and it looks like he stabs Lucy. And basically, it's like warped him into wherever they are. And so then, I'm left with a lot of questions after Brotherhood. It immediately makes me want to play Revelations. I would assume that the story would go ahead and be finished. You would at least think that that's what's going to happen. I can tell you at the beginning of Revelations that nothing like that is mentioned. So we really don't know. I think Desmond's he's trapped in the device. So maybe he did kill her. Maybe he killed the whole team. I don't know. And now he can't get out. So Revelations begins with him in the device. And I'll finish the game and see what happens, or if it answers any of the questions I have. But right now, you know that in modern day, they're sending Desmond back in time. Well, the gods warn him as he's Ezio and tell him, like, hey, there's some traitors, be careful. You're close to finding out what you need to know, what we hid, the knowledge back in time all this time ago. And so they send him a warning. He looks like he stabs Lucy, but it's in a dream state. So you don't know if he does it or not. Is he really in the Animus? In the movie, it had the Animus being like he would reenact the moves. In the game, he's just lying down on a bed. So even if he thought that he did it in his dream, he doesn't really move in the game. It's not like he could really move like in the movie where he could like fake a flip out. She runs over to him and he stabs her. But they make it seem like that's how it kind of ended. Him doing the traitor. Well, that's where I think, man, I don't know if they know. They're kind of making this up as they go. Because in the first game, I think they had an idea to do a sequel if it did well. And then they would be a different guy. And I think the whole idea was for them jumping in different times. Well, so far with the second trilogy, or the first trilogy, really it's the sequel to the first game. They kind of spread it out. And it was kind of like, at first it seemed like they were just going to jump around in different places of history, which is what it turned out to be now. Well, whenever they stayed in Italy for a couple games, I think they were trying to add this backstory, and it looked like they were doing less and less of the backstory, or trying to make it less weird. And I think what they did was, based on me playing Freedom Cry and the beginning of Unity, I think what they did was they wanted to cut out that intro part, which is basically like the modern day. I think I saw somewhere where the guy called it a wrapper, where it wrapped the game around so that they could tie all the games together and explain why he was jumping in different lands. But I'm pretty sure that they got rid of that. I know the menu of the game kind of makes it seem like you're still in the machine, especially for Chronicles, because like I said, I beat Chronicles, China, India, and Russia. And I want to say Russia was my favorite of those, maybe because it had guns and I like the color scheme and the story of Anastasia. But for Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, they added some cool elements to the game. But the story just didn't, like some of the story, there are just some inconsistencies across the first 3 games in the series. And I know it's a video game, so a lot of it's interactive. Stories are usually an afterthought. But I think that's why video games get a bad rap as not being as good as movies. Because, yeah, they had some good elements. If they had planned out, and I know it's hard to plan out sales. Some games bomb, and then that's the last one you see until people run out of ideas. I liken it to Turok, which hopefully is one of the games that I'm able to stream as I play because I have it on Steam. But they had the first 3 games. They did well on the Nintendo 64. They tried to bring it back on other systems. Well, they had to change up the story. A cool game, I liked it. But it didn't do as well. So then they go ahead and they try to reboot it with a different story, a different one for the latest game. And I'm sure they'll reboot it eventually. But if it doesn't do as well, then there's no point in keep trying to do it. But with the same line, but you can't go back through and remaster or retell. So I'm sure that's what they did with Assassin's Creed. They did the first one. It did better than what they thought, based off it did so well that they quit making Prince of Persia games, which is what it was kind of based off. A more realistic Prince of Persia, where your guy's just not running around crazy and jumping off cliffs and doing flying, because a lot of as I played more of these, the movements, the parkour stuff where your guy's climbing walls and stuff, was based off Prince of Persia, because they made it. Ubisoft makes that game. And the movements were so smooth in the old GameCube Prince of Persia, which one stands the time, that your guy was he was like an acrobat. Well, in Assassin's Creed, I think they made the physics more realistic, where your guy can't jump forever and he can't go down and stuff like that. So the physics in Prince of Persia made for a smoother game because it was more artistic. Now, Assassin's Creed, they're more realistic. So it kind of gives you a feeling that I've never felt before playing Prince of Persia. Sort of like if your guy falls, the camera kind of makes it feel like it would hurt. Where maybe, I don't know, maybe it's just the HD graphics of this game. But when my guy falls, I get a feeling oh man, this is going to hurt. It might just be me, but others might feel the same way. But that is what I look at when I play this, with the physics being more realistic and actually the jumping and falling and everything being something that is relatable, it makes the game a little bit better. And I wish that they had done a Prince of Persia in more of a realistic sense, because that was the game that got me into Assassin's Creed. At first, I made me kind of stay away. I was like, this is kind of a Prince of Persia ripoff. They did the same thing. They did a Prince of Persia movie with Disney. It wasn't that quite big of a success. So then you go ahead and you have a new series that they sprout up, sort of built on the same idea. They're just tired of telling the prince's story, which, I mean, you can only do so much. The one thing that I do miss and I find myself reaching for is in the Prince of Persia series, if you fall, you can go back in time. So, like, as you do a quick fall, you would reach for like the L1 or something. I can't remember what the button was. But I do find myself trying to do that whenever I make a fall. Or sometimes the guy jumps in a ridiculous fashion. He jumps like way off the screen. And then it says like desynchronization imminent. And I understand why they did that. And I think it was a good choice to go ahead and add in the desynchronization as a way to explain why you're not dying and why you can keep going back and forth. Because if you die in the memory, your guy might get hurt in real life, the subject who's in the Animus, but overall he can go back in time and get back to where he is. And I think that that works well in terms of the story itself. And so I'm glad that they did that. And looking back at just a comparison of those two in the first game, they've made some strides. Now, I would like them to see if they would go ahead and do a newer Prince of Persia, a more realistic one, something that's kind of hard-hitting like this, kind of based off the same story. I think it would be a success, and I think it's something that I know I would like, but others would like as well. But overall, if we're left with just Assassin's Creed games, I think they're a great segue into it. And it would be cool even if they kind of did some type of combination where they combine both. I would like to see that as well, where maybe there's a crossover where he meets up. And that might happen, but I kind of doubt it. I mean, they meet up with other historical figures, but the prince isn't really an historical figure. He's more of just another video game series. And I'm surprised that they don't try to go ahead and bring that back, using what they learned making these Assassin's Creed games. And so here we go with Brotherhood. It ends on a weird note. Like I said, it looks like he kills Lucy. I looked through to find the other memory pieces from like the bonus content. I watched some other things on YouTube trying to see if I missed any of the cutscenes. I usually watch them with subtitles. Even if I miss something, I can kind of read and hear what's going on. And it makes sure that I know what's happening. But it looked like I didn't really miss anything. It was just kind of like a confusing, sloppy story. Maybe they've thrown it together. The beginning of Revelations makes me think that they really had no idea how to tie this together. And I think that's the one thing that could have made video game stories even better. They had an idea. They could have really went above and beyond, but they kind of made some clunky mistakes, left you guessing. I'm sure that they would say it's intentional, but you know it's not going to be 100%. And so that's where we're at with this game. And I'm sure we're going to be digging into the other ones here. Like I said, I'm out and about. I'm traveling, had an event. So I do not have, this isn't going to be as long as possible or as long as normal. We'll be getting back into the groove here as I'm setting some things up. Again, still moving the stuff. Hopefully everything's in place by the year anniversary. I really hope I have time to knock some of these out this summer. Maybe we'll get some rainy days, but it's been pretty nice weather-wise. And I've just been getting caught up on some of my programming projects stuff, moving those over first because they're on GitHub and the repositories are available for download. The Socially Numb podcast is probably going to be next, possibly. I don't know. I have the Dad Strength ones to move over And that one is going to be one where I'm still adding items to my list of essential items for dads. And I'll kind of go through and add that, but that's going to be a whole nother segment on the Leahey report for now. Possibly, I was thinking of maybe archiving it on my own personal site, but I haven't made a final decision yet, and that might reflect on how I'm going to go ahead and add things. The numbers on Apple News have been encouraging and good. Getting good downloads, like I said, since I started to do some little bit of streaming, picking up a couple followers, which was like a brand new account. So I went from 0 to a handful now. So if you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to me. It's Richie Leahey. Same on Twitter. Follow me there. I have a good bit of followers now on Twitter. I need to become more active and promote some of my stuff a little bit better. But we'll see. That's one of my resolutions for the summer. But thanks for listening. I know I kind of tied in with a little bit of Revelations. I didn't want to get too confusing because I'm playing through both. But I'm hoping we'll see next week. If I'm able to beat Revelations and Resident Evil, those are the two games we're going to talk about. And then that should get me caught up. I don't think there's any other games that I beat in the meantime that I missed. And if I find anything else about streaming some video games, I'll let you know. I know I started with the Zelda 1. When I do PS4, I'm going to need to get a camera, the PlayStation 4 camera eye or whatever they call it, so that you can see me as I stream. That's going to be a requirement for me. Just something that I want to do. It's not a requirement for streaming on Twitch, but it makes the streams that much better. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you again next week.